Thank you so much for joining us, Jacques. Will you tell me how to pronounce your last name, please?
Herviou.
Herviou.
Yeah, we don't pronounce the H's are silent in French.
Herviou.
Herviou.
Okay, I will work on that.
That's all right.
And we'll all practice some French together. So you'll have to work us through the pronunciations of all of these wine labels.
Yes, there will be a test in the end. Yes.
Okay, fabulous. I'm a super type A and I love tests, so that works out great. So Jacques, while Angela is getting connected here, will you tell us where you're tuning in from? I hear you are not actually in France, you're in New York, correct?
No. Well, Kira, love will make you do stupid things. And so I'm actually in the city of brotherly love right now. I'm in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, hence the very dramatic decor behind me. It's like it will be a big reveal in the end. But yeah, no, I'm on the road visiting customers and doing a little bit of tourism. So.
All right, fabulous. Well, we're super excited to have you here. Here we go. Angela is joining us in. So wonderful.
Hey, Angela.
Angela. I am so sorry. I believe all the technical problems were on my end somehow, but I don't know why or how to fix it. So, but we're everyone in here now. Before we officially, so all this will be kind of edited out for whatever I post. So I'll officially introduce you in just a second. But just as a way of introduction for how this meeting will go, if that's okay. We had so many people cancel at the last minute for the live tune-in session. A lot of people bought the wine. They were like, well, the weather's really nice, Kira. We're going to watch the recording later tonight when we're done with the grill outs, or tomorrow afternoon. So a lot of people are watching the recording, which is going to be fabulous. But with a smaller group, now we don't have to deal with as much of the chat room. And so at the end, I would love for a question and answer time where people can actually ask you questions instead of fielding everything through the chat room. But while the discussion is going, if you have a question, you want to make sure you don't forget, just type it in the chat room so that I can make sure I'm keeping track of all of the questions to be answered. So does that work for you, Jacques?
Everything works for me.
Right, so amenable. I love it. So thank you. Well, welcome, Jacques. Thank you so much, Angela, for setting up again another Meet the Expert or Meet the Winemaker event. I'm very excited to have everyone here and taste through these amazing wines. When I open these wines up to taste them and write the reviews yesterday morning, Friday morning, about 9 o'clock is when I like to write my wine reviews. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I just want to cancel the rest of the day and just keep drinking these wines. Who cares about delivering the wines? I just want to enjoy the wines. So I'm very excited to taste all these wines with you all. So thank you, Jacques, for tuning in from Philadelphia. And I'd love for you to start. By the way, if you haven't already, we're going to start with the Vermentino here, the Château Maris Vermentino 2019 vintage. And I'd love for you to just kind of give us a general history of how this crazy story of these four people came together to start this project. And we're excited to get to know you all.
Sure. If you want to make me the host, I'll share my screen.
Fabulous.
And I'll show you a couple things. Host, disable participant sharing screen. Here we go. I am now the host. Okay, so let's do that, and let's do that. Can you guys all see this? Okay, very good. So as Kira mentioned, this is the first wine that we're going to try. I don't think this is going to be a sort of classic tasting analysis of the wine and so on. That's boring. Yeah, let's just dig into the wine, try them all back and forth and backwards in any orders. This is the order that's suggested. But yes, 4 wines tonight. The Vermentino, which is a bit cheeky, isn't it? Because in French it's called Rolle, R-O-L-L-E. But I think we would all agree that Vermentino rolls off the tongue a bit easier. So it's a Mediterranean grape. It's grown a lot in Sardinia, in Corsica, and in France. When it's done on its own, it makes always very minerally wine. But it can be a bit lean Lean is a nice word for austere. And so what we did with this wine, we did something very particular. We left the wine on its skin. It's called skin contact, and it really filled in the mid palate. And certainly the fatness that you get on the mid palate, it comes from this technique. Uh, all the wines that we produce are certified organic. All the wine that we produce is certified biodynamic. And so we're certified by Ecocer, USDA, Demeter Biodynamic, and Biodivin. Uh, and I get asked very, very often about biodynamics. It becomes sort of the big topic of conversation. A segue to this, I guess, would be this picture right here. When I ask people, I show this picture. What do you see here? 90%, 99% of the people usually tell me, well, I see a gentleman in a red jumper looking up at a tree. Whereas in reality, 90% of this picture is vegetation. It's plant world. And something that, if I can show you this, we become a bit blind when it comes to the plant world, because things just don't happen on the same time scale as we do. So let me show you this climbing plant right here, and I hope it comes through. It comes through well. It's a plant that was put in the middle of a room with a pole on one side. Instinctively, the plant is reaching out for the pole, and it's reaching in that direction. And you can see from the leaves how it's struggling and making such an effort, throwing its lasso, trying to reach that pole. How does it know that the pole is there? Doesn't have any eyes, doesn't have a nervous system. And yet, if you move the pole, the plant would start reaching out for it. If there's another pole on the other side, they'll start competing for the same pole. And one of them reaches it, the other one will give up and look for another one. And now, in a last effort, come on, you can do it, you can do it, it's got it. Oh, no, not quite yet. One more try. Come on, you can do it. And there you go. And certainly, you see the leaves just relaxing, the plant relaxing. I've done my job. I've done it. If we think, if we speed things up, it becomes very obvious, doesn't it? Uh, the plant world just doesn't work on the same time scale as we do. The oldest trees in the world are in Sweden, and they're 10,000 years old. So biodynamic is based on, well, organic to start with, but it's also based on homeopathy and homeopathic preparations. They're based out of stinging nettles and yarrow and oak tree and these are medicinal plants that we use ourselves. So why would they not have an effect on other plants? Or hence goes to thinking. And why does it work? We have absolutely no idea. But we did tests after test after test of biodynamic pile, for instances, of compost, some treated with in a biodynamic way and the other one not. And year after year after year, the biodynamic piles always have more life, more heat, more nitrogen, more potassium. So that's really what made us go the biodynamic road. So why are we biodynamic? Uh, because it works quite simply. And this is a way to make to make the best wine that we can possibly make. Uh, so as far as where we are, here we go. So we're obviously in France. We are very much in the south of France. So we're 20 minutes from the Mediterranean Sea. We're about an hour from Spain. My local airport is Barcelona, and although the border is closed right now, but that's another story. And we're nudged between two mountains, between the Pyrenees, which make the border with Spain, and the Massif Central, the Central Mountains that are just north of us. So we're sort of in that small valley, between the Atlantic and the Pacific. Uh, our region is called the Languedoc. Um, the Languedoc is a region that is the largest producing wine region in the world by eons. This region right there makes more wine than the United States, all state combined. It's 3 times the production of Australia. Where we are, if you go up on a hill and you look at the horizon, the only thing you will see is just a carpet of vine until the Pyrenees. So in France, we're not too organized about too many things, but we're organized about the wine world. So the Languedoc been divided and subdivided. So we are in the Pic region called the Minervois, named after the town, the tiny village of Minerve. And where we are specifically is the darker spot called Minervois Cru la Livinière. Rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? And it's a tiny village right outside of the town of Carcassonne. No, it's not my office, but it is the capital of cassoulet. So if duck fat is part of your new healthy lifestyle, this is the place for you. And we are in the Black Mountains. So the Black Mountains as the hill are the hills that you can see behind behind this walled city there. So it's all hillside vineyard, and it's a tiny village. Uh, my kids last year represented 8% of the school district, just the two of them, and everybody is connected to the wine world. Somebody asked me once, "Oh, if you're not into wine, what do you do?" It's like, well, you're either retired or you're still in school. Either you make wine, or you drive the truck that brings the wine here and there, or you make the labels, or you sell the pallets or the barrels. But it's a one industry region, and it's not wine Disneyland, and this is not Napa. This is farmland. These are people that have been growing grapes since 2,000 years. And we know this because the name of our town, if you break it down to its Latin root, La Li Vinière. Once you have wine in Latin in the middle of the name of your town, it's been growing grapes for some time. They even found writings from Cicero, who was the consul of Rome, mentioning our town as making wines of particular quality. What they drank at the time was awful, but that's beside the point. So this is very much La Livinière at rush hour, and this is it. One of our typical vineyards. It's Las Combes. Um, what we bought was, I know it says Château Maris in the name, but I have very bad news. There is no castle. There is no Labrador. There is no swimming pool. It is a winery, not surrounded by its own vineyard, but we have 17 different plots all around the appellation. So most of our vineyards are 3-4 acres. We know absolutely every single vine on the estate, and we make very low yields. What we bought, the only thing we bought was a bunch of vineyards. The winery was falling apart, but the farmers were really good at cultivating, at pruning these vines. As you can see, this is all head prune, untrained. So straight away, you know that no machineries go into these vineyards. Uh, it's all picked by hand, 100%. And in this picture, you see a lot of flowers, which is mustard mixed with bulgur and 5 kinds of cereal, some snow peas, and this is just cover crop that we flatten and then we resow on top of it continually. But it is also attract life. I was actually having trouble taking this picture because I was chased down by bees, but that's what you want. How do you expect to make a product that is full of life from a place that has no life? I went to some vineyard in New York recently in Long Island, and it was striking to me the silence walking down these vineyards, and sort of the bare soil, and the soil had just become an anchor for the vine. But no, you want biodiversity. You want to feel the life in these places, because this lack of life result in a lack of life within the vines, the grape, the wines, but ultimately within the people who consume these wines. I mean, there's a bunch of lawsuits winding its way into court in California, for instance, with arsenic in wine, with levels that would be illegal for water. Glyphosate, how is Roundup still legal when we know that it's dangerous? And yet you can do an analysis of any commercial wine that you find at any Total Wine or so. You will find trace amounts of glyphosate in those wines. I don't want to ruin the vibe. I'm not going to go there, but I think it's important to know those things. uh, there is a real sort of awakening about um, what we ingest, what we eat, but it's time to realize what we drink as well. We think of wine as organic. It's biblical, right? But it isn't. Only for all the talk about organic wine, the country that leads the world in organic wine is Spain. And in Spain, only 5% of the entire production of Spain is organic. That's it. When you come to France, it falls to I think 3.8, and in other countries it goes much lower. I'm talking, but I don't want to get into the way of the drinking. So I would strongly encourage you to sink your teeth into the next one. It's a great lineup tonight. We make a lot of wines. I have a partner that has an idea a minute, uh, uh, and we make 14 wines altogether. But these are incredible. And this is which vintage do you have, by the way, Curious? Is it 17 or the 18?
Great question. It is the 18
Very
that
good,
we
very
have.
good.
So
So, by the way, a few words on the label. This is the Tree of Life from Charles Darwin, from 1858. Hence the name of the cuvée, Natural Selection. But this is a wine that is, it's the perfect example of the tragedy of the Languedoc. We're not making wine in Barolo. We're not making wine in Pauillac or in Napa. Uh, uh, this is a wine that's low yield, certified biodynamic vineyards, all handpicked in small barrel, uh, uh, unfined, unfiltered, aged 12 months in barrels, blended, re-aged for 6 months, bottled. Uh, uh, Last vintage was 94 points by the by Wine and Spirit magazine, and yet we sell it at around $20. It's absolutely ridiculous. But this is the region where we're making wine. There's certainly a glass ceiling against which we bump. It's not so great for us, but for consumer, uh, given the Languedoc is a region that makes great value wine, but in quantities. It's not 400 cases that we make to this wine. It's 4,000 cases, which is still a drop of water in the ocean of wine. But at least we have something to sell. This is a wine that in New York City, for instance, is by the glass at Balthazar, at Blue Water Grill, at Bluefin, and so on, because it's irresistible, isn't it? It's the fruit is so ripe that it comes across as almost sweet, and yet the analysis is 2.9 grams of sugar in this wine. It's completely bone dry on analysis, but it's packed with black fruit. More than the spiciness of Syrah, you have the velvety texture of Syrah. Really intense minerality. This is if the first wine that we had, the Vermentino, was great with like marinated anchovies on focaccia. This would be yeah, like a cassoulet or something like that. Toulouse sausages or magret of duck or even hanger steak. This is that kind of wine. It's a winter wine. It's also a wine that's made with Syrah and Grenache. So it's definitely a wine from Southern Europe. It's not going to be shy. It's not going to be light. And so let's continue the story. This is my business partner. He's one of the craziest men I know, and his name is Robert Eden. And he's got a fascinating story because he's the nephew of Anthony Eden. from the crown. He was who was the Prime Minister of England in the 50s, and he's the direct descendant of, well, to connect it to your region, he's the direct descendant of Lord Baltimore. So if you research his name, Robert Eden, is direct descendant. Lord Robert Eden was the last British governor of the Commonwealth of Maryland. So in Baltimore, there's a Robert Eden Street, Robert Eden School, and so on. But he's also someone who was kicked out of school at 17 for brewing beer in his dorm. And his father shipped him off to Australia. And there, as a teenager, he found himself just pruning vines in a McLaren Vale with Len Evans, who was really the father figure of fine wine in Australia. Then, he worked his way back through to Castello di Rompola with Giuseppe, whom my wife's called Looney 2, Robert being Looney number 1. And finally, he worked in Burgundy with some of the best estates in Burgundy. And we became fast friends in 1996 around a pile of steaming compost in the south of France, and we've been working together ever since. And it's 4 of us, and it starts a bit like a joke because it's actually an Englishman, an American, and 2 French guys. And one day we'll make a profit. Uh, One thing that we're infamous for, and I hope I don't lose you just quite yet, um, is our winery. Uh, we were already organic and biodynamic and bringing our fruit in an environment that was filled with polyethylene, and it smelled like a fresh car. And we wanted to sort of continue the journey, and bring it to its logical conclusion. And so what we did, we started building this construction, which took us 7 years and nearly bankrupt us. And it took us 7 years because the entire building is constructed out of cannabis. It's well, it's cannabis straw, really. It's hemp mixed with hydraulic lime and molasses. So essentially, the molasses act as a sugar fixer, and hold those bricks together. They weigh 20 pounds. And why on earth would you build a winery out of hemp? Which is, let me state for the record, that it's the dumbest idea we've ever had, or that Robert had ever had. Um, we wanted a building with no temperature control system. We all love air conditioning. It's delicious, isn't it? Especially in our region where it gets to about 90, 92 degrees in summertime. But it messes the quality of the air. It changes the quality of the air. And we have a lot of product in direct contact with the air. So that was job number 1. And we also didn't want any heating system. And hemp, apart from the very obvious jokes, has amazing geothermal properties. So it allows us to have a building of this size, and it's an 11,000 square feet facility, with no air conditioning, no heating system. Since we use gravity and we have only 12 LED lights, the building is energy self-sufficient. And the kicker is that once you mix hemp with lime, there's a carbonation effect that takes place. So instead of gassing off carbon dioxide, the building does the reverse and absorbs carbon dioxide. So the building is not carbon neutral, it's carbon negative. So it's nothing fancy. There's no helipad or anything like that, but all the walls, double walls, rooftop, it's all hemp. The structure is untreated wood. The only thing out of concrete, really, poor concrete, is the floor. Otherwise, we would have vegetation growing and so on, and we need the forklift to go back and forth. But in the middle there, this is the barrel cellar, where natural selection and les anciens spend months and months and months of their life in the middle of a hemp building. Les anciens, by the way, is not natural selection is aged in barrels, but Les Anciens doesn't see any barrel. Carignan doesn't like that at all. It hates it, and we age it in those sort of Mork and Mindy escape pods, which are made out of Roman style concrete with no additive, and they're online, just a coat of acid on the inside, and for some reason, and it is like biodynamic. We've had many sommeliers coming to the winery, and you make them taste the wine that has been aged in a regular concrete square tank and in an egg, and somehow it does taste different. Tasted completely blind. Why? No, absolutely no idea. So if you go on Google Earth, you're not going to see much because this is the rooftop of the building. I love to take customers up here because you have a great view of the surrounding hills and La Livinière, the village of La Livinière at a distance. And some people get seasick a little bit because since the building is not rigid, it tends to flex a little bit with the wind. But we expect it to last at least as long as any industrial building if it's well maintained. Um, as I previously mentioned, sadly, my partner is British, and so he's obsessed with horses. And these are not rental horses, because that's the new thing right now. You call some guy who shows up in a with a trailer, and you do a day of a day of plowing. No, we do tilling with two horses, Malicieuse, which is this one, the small one, and Carabi. They're percherons. They weigh 1 ton, and they can pull 3 tons, and they get very, very, very hungry. But they're really gentle beasts. Anyone can ride them, really. So now it's really one of the most interesting wines in my portfolio. It is the Savoir Vieillir. I know at this point you think I'm specializing in unpronounceable French words, but there's no direct translation. But it translates into to know how to age gracefully. And the reason why we named this wine like this is that this is a no sulfite wine. This is a zero sulfite wine. It was tested actually in Maryland in the TTB offices at 3 parts per millions of sulfites. So it's 0.00003% of sulfites. There's nothing in there at all. Um, and it is one of our best wines. If you look at the neck, it says Les Planelles, and we make a wine with sulfites that is called Château Maris Les Planelles, which is one of the highest rated wines of the south of France. And so we thought we would. It's right on the necker, and we thought we would make a version of these wines with no sulfites whatsoever. So these two wines pretty much start the same way. They're handpicked, brought to the winery. Everything is hand sorted on vibrating sorting table. So you have 6 people just picking everything, just to make sure. It's like cooking. You put something, you put one bunch of rotten grapes in your tank, and it's like garlic. So everything is clean going into the tanks. It's fermented with native yeast. Uh, um, there's no pumping over. We don't do a lot on the wine at all. We feel that it tires the wine. And after the end of the fermentation, the regular cuvee goes into barrels for 14 months, whereas the Savoir Vieillir is capped with a layer of CO2, and it's stabilized for 4 months, and then it's bottled straight away with no oxygen whatsoever. And so the fruit speaks very, very, very differently. One of them went through aging, and so uh, I usually compare sulfites and non-sulfite wines to fires. The regular cuvée of Les Planelles is a nice candlelight dinner. Uh, the Savoir Vieillir is a wildfire. It's a haystack on fire. It burns its fruits very intensely. It's an explosion of black and red berries. Uh, but usually, no sulfite wines are not meant to be aged. The regular cuvée of Les Planelles will go 15 years, no problem. Usually, no sulfite wines, 2 or 3 years. This we reckon can go 5, 6 years because it does have everything. It does have the structure, the minerality, the fruit. That's the thing. If you don't start with the fruit, what are we doing? This is a refreshment. you know.
Open
And
like a chef. If you don't start with a good product, you can't make a good meal. So
that's it. Oh, I am of the opinion that a wine should be good at every stage of its life. I love it in tasting, and I'm sure Kira, you hear it all the time. Oh, this wine is just not in a happy stage right now, but it's going to improve. No, if the fruit's gone, the fruit's not coming back. It's done. It has lived. But this right now, what's really appealing is it's the way the fruit expresses itself when it hasn't been aged and when it hasn't seen any sulfites. As far as a pairing, it's just me. I really envisioned really fresh things with this, like a super fresh goat cheese, for instance, with fresh herbs, with roasted root vegetables, with a balsamic glaze on it. That's the kind of meal that I really love to see with this wine. It's stonkingly delicious. Really, it's a wine that we would drink with both hands like this, like, because it's so immediately appealing and irresistible. You know.
I fully agree with you. So I core vend these samples yesterday morning to make my reviews. And then last night I had friends over for dinner and I was like, well, I, I still have the taste of this wine in my mouth and I can't go to bed without tasting it again. So I popped the cork. I was like, I'll just open up another bottle for tomorrow. And I was like,
Yeah.
you have to taste this wine. So I fully agree. Can you, before we move on, it sounds like the chemistry of sulfites is very confusing to a lot of Americans, especially because there is this like agenda that
Sure.
sulfites are bad, sulfites are dangerous, sulfites are scary. And that's what you're allergic to in wines. They look for non-sulfite
Yeah.
wines when
Yeah.
really the problem with sulfites is something totally different. So can you talk to us about why sulfur dioxide is necessary sometimes, what it chemically is doing to the wine, and
Mm,
how it is changing it or not changing it?
sure. Uh, uh, Really, hardly anybody is allergic to sulfite. There's a minority of asthmatic people that have a strong reaction to sulfites, uh, uh, and they all know it. Uh, Everything that we consume has sulfites. Coffee, orange juice, French fries, any processed food, it's loaded with sulfites. There's more sulfites in three dried apricot than an entire bottle of wine. Having said that, there's some differences. Uh, uh, like I've heard of a bottle of Yellowtail Chardonnay, for instance, which clocked in at 240 parts per million. When you consider that a wine like Natural Selection clocks in at about 29, and the Savoir the Savoir Vieilleur you just had is at 3. Uh, Sulfites in summertime, I take my kids to the Pyrenees, and we take bath in sulfur water. So it's not unhealthy. Uh, why do we use sulfites? Exactly the same reason why we take bath in it, because it disinfects. And the reason, there's two parts where you usually use sulfites. In sort of mass consumption wines, uh, uh, wines really are not let to ferment by themselves. Usually in big producers, what they'll pick the grapes, put it in a tank, they'll put ton of sulfite in a wine to kill any native yeast, and then they re-inoculate the wine with artificial yeast or designer yeast, which can impart a certain taste or conduct malolactic. Well, I don't want to get too technical, but in the end, usually sulfite is also used well in barrel aging and also at bottling. And this is where we do it. We don't believe in using sulfites to the must of the wine, but at bottling it kills any loose yeast that could be in the wine and prevents the wine from re-fermenting. So really, that's the whole story with sulfites. What I'll say, the reason why we use it is not for a healthy reason. It's that it makes wine in a very fruit speaks very differently, uh, 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 with or without sulfite. And I mean, you have two wines there that are Natural Selection and Le Planel. uh, the primary fruit that we get in the vineyard is not that drastically different. And yet when you taste the wine, they are in two completely opposite stratospheres. So um, there's a couple things I wanted to mention about our winery as well. Is that uh, we have uh, um, rather extreme environmental ethos, and it's just something very personal to us. For instance, uh, behind our wines, you will start to see the appearance of this logo, the yellow and white there. We've just associated ourselves in December with a nonprofit called Aspas, and so a part of our profit, and usually when I hear a company saying that part of a profit goes to a nonprofit, I usually assume that that number is 0.01%. But in this case, 12% of all our profit is going to rewilding efforts in France. So large swath of France are purchased, and there is no fishing, no hunting, no farming. And so wildlife and biodiversity can thrive again. Badgers, foxes, bears, and so on. Um, we are also the only big corporation in Europe. Um, in this business, we always talk about how the grapes have been treated. Have they seen any chemicals or and so on? But we never talk about who made the damn wine. And so, B Corporation, this is an international certification that started in the US. Yes, it includes a sustainability element to it, but there's also a social responsibility element to it. The idea is that the sole goal of a corporation should not just be to maximize profit for its shareholders. Is that you have other stakeholders, uh, yes, the environment, but your community, and of course your employees. So other B corporations in America, the Patagonia, uh, uh, Ben and Jerry's ice cream, King Arthur Flour, which is employee owned. So I think we all know what's behind those companies essentially, and so we're very proud to be the first one to reach that status in Europe, which takes us to the big boy. Kira, I don't know how you got this because I know how many cases are in the U.S. total, and we're talking a handful.
Well,
So,
Angela poured me a sample of it, and
oh, it's outrageous.
there were 26 bottles left, and they were in New Jersey. And I was like, I
Yeah,
take them all, send them to
yeah,
Virginia.
yeah.
They are mine. No one
Yeah.
else gets
No,
them.
no, and
This
and
for
that's
Virginia
and
Culture Tribe members. So
yeah, yeah, no, and that's it. Huh? That's really it. We make we make 300 cases of this wine. That's it. And to us, this is the most interesting wine we make. It is not the most highest rated and so on, but it is made with a varietal called Carignan. And if you're going to a 3-star restaurant, it's like seeing one of the fish dish, uh, bluefish. It's the Carignan is like the bluefish of the wine world. It's the ugly little duckling. It's usually used for blending. It ruined the reputation of the long duck for many many years because Carignan has this ability to grow an incredible amount of grapes while still maintaining high levels of sugar. So if you want to make plunk, this is perfect. But these vines, it's called Les Anciens, the ancients, because they were planted in 1922. I mean, think about it. I mean, you're talking 4 years after the end of the Great War. Anybody who planted these vines have been gone for decades, uh, um, and yet they're still producing, and they're producing a ridiculously small amount of wine. And obviously, this is the oldest vineyard we have. And actually, there is a funny story because even in France, nobody wants Carignan, and so we used to sell those grapes to the local co-op, which it's a very good co-op, by the way. And um, we were visiting Jean, who runs it, and we were trying some wines in a cooperative barrel cellar, and we came across this barrel which was extraordinary, and we're like, "Wow, Jean, what the hell is this? This is really good." And he goes, you turn around and said, well, you idiots, it's yours. And it was okay. It was a Carignan. And so in 20, what was it, in 2000 and 2007, we started doing it as a monovarietal 100% Carignan from these super old vines, and it became one of our calling card wines. It's got this incredible blue fruit. The 2016 now is reaching the beginning of maturity. It's a highly unusual and rare wine. It's fun stuff, and it's part of the history of the region, really.
It was really amazing to taste. When Angela brought this to me, I just planned another last month's Meet the Maker event, and it was a winery in California who focused on old vine Carignan. And so I just so happened to have 2 sample bottles of California old vine Carignan. So it was really amazing. Angela and I, we had a tasting that should have lasted 40 minutes that turned into 2 hours. So we're like, let's try all these wines side by side and get to know them. So it was really informative because Carignan is so often blended. It's very rare to find a real varietal expression of the grapes. So thank you.
And this has found its ways into some of the best wine lists in New York City, for instance. Because you taste that with a sommelier and they just lose their mind. They're like, there's no way this is Carignan. We're like, yeah, oh yeah, it very much is. All of it. And this is all made again in those congregate fermentation and aging. So I don't know if you have. I've been talking for an hour now, so I don't know if you have any questions or any thoughts or any feedback about the wines. Are they good? Are they terrible? At least we're not in a big group, so feel free to unmute yourself and jump in right there instead of the chat. I see there's one chat there. How old are the vines? Well, it really depends. Again, some of the oldest vines that we have are from 1922, and you're drinking them right now. But we're constantly replanting. It's the vineyard is a evolving, moving things. After vines reaches a certain age, you lose so much of the yield that it stops making sense financially. It's okay for les anciens because we make 300 cases and that's no big deal. But in something like the natural selection, the work that is done on each vineyard remains the same. If the yield is 30 hectoliters or if it's 50 hectoliters, you still do about 30 passes a year. So we're actually replanting some of the Syrahs right now. But the average age of the vineyard right now is about 22, 23 years old.
I know.
Excellent. Can you, I would love to chat a little bit more because I promised everyone you would break down the idea of what biodynamics is for us. There's all this rage right now, unfortunately, in the United States about natural wines, and that has no classification, no meaning, no anything. And people are looking for these. It's a marketing strategy, and so it's part of my mission, my gospel, to preach against the idea that just because a wine is natural, it's good. Your wines are amazing because they're biodynamic, which is the epitome of the far end of the spectrum of natural wines, but actually taste delicious. Can you break down what goes into being classified as a Demeter or Demeter a biodynamic winery?
Sure. Well, first of all, Sunpop, thank you for your comment, and that's the least I can say. I always say that you can be as organic, you can be as sustainable as you want to be. If the wines suck, the conversation ends really, really quickly. We're in a business of making delicious wine by being biodynamic. We're not the other way around. I will arch back to why we are biodynamic. We are biodynamic because it was a business decision. Biodynamic started in the 20s, in 1924 actually. It was a gentleman called Rudolf Steiner, who was an Austrian philosopher. And in Vienna, he did a series of lectures because he was asked by farmers themselves who were already dealing with the damage done by chemicals. How do we bring back life into our vineyards? Again, if you use, we think of soil as dead, but it's not dead. It's very much alive. It's full of microbiotic life, and this is how plants feed themselves. and by adding petroleum-based fertilizer, insecticide, pesticides, fungicides, and so on, you sort of morally fail the consumer again by killing the life of the subsoil, of the plant, of the wine, of the people. Uh, so biodynamic is about life. It's about improving the life of a vineyard by the addition of biodynamic preparations. And yes, there is a biodynamic calendar that we follow, but like everything, also like natural wine, uh, this is not a cult. And we are biodynamic because we saw the results ourselves. Like the biodynamic compost pile that I was talking about, for instance, these were tested by the Chamber of Agriculture of Montpellier, one of the oldest in the world and one of the most serious in the world. And when they give you the results of tests comparing biodynamic piles of compost against non-biodynamic, it's right there on black and white. Then they ask you for an explanation, and we're like, we have no idea. And even some of our vineyards now are you can tell when there's a drought episode, for instance, and God knows there are many drought episodes these days. Um, you just look and you just look at a hill, and we can recognize our vineyards because suddenly they're not yellow and burned. Uh, uh, they, they, if they're I'll give you a typical example. When they're stressed like this, when they're pushed to the edge, uh, huge amounts of vats of chamomile tea that will calm everybody down. You're looking for energy? Hey, how about a good dose of silica? Yeah. These are again these are remedies that you can buy yourself right now, and you buy yourself at the local Walgreens or CVS. So why would they not have an effect on other plants? Yeah. And we have teas of their own recipes, like a lavender, for instance. We use a lot of lavender, and we dynamize them in very particular way. We make huge amount of teas, and we use sprayers going through the vineyards. Um, for planting, for instance, we'll plant on descending moon cycle so that the gravitational pull will help the plant help itself. But then again, when you're talking about the effect of the moon on the 224-liter barrel, for instance, on such a tiny amount of liquid, you know, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. But biodynamic is very much based on observation. There is a independent. There is two actually independent third party uh, 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 organization that we pay. And by the way, the world is upside down, isn't it? You can put all the Roundup you want in your wine, all the sulfites that you want in your wine, all the genetically modified yeast that you want in your wine. You have to give zero information to consumers. I want to claim that my wine has no chemical. I have to pay some tusser to come to my vineyard and bother me on a Friday afternoon to go through my paperwork, do testing on my land, on my machinery, on my wine, uh, um, to say that yes, no, you don't have any chemicals. It should completely be the other way around. You know,
Would you
it is
advocate as a producer? Would you advocate for
a list of ingredients.
a list of ingredients? There's
That's
a
what
lot
we
of
try to do. That's
advocacy.
what we try to do with Savoir Vieillir.
Mhm.
Really try to absolutely. It should be mandated uh, tomorrow, just for one thing: residual sugar. Yeah. I forget what it is. And maybe Kira, you can tell me what's in the Savoir Vieillir 2018. It should be listed on the back of the label there. I can't remember if it's like 2.3 or something like that.
It is actually just 1.9 grams per liter.
Okay. Anybody wants to take a wild guess as how much sugar is? Let's take a big name, shall we? Let's take something expensive. Okay. Camus Cab. Camus Cabernet Sauvignon. 9.9 grams of sugar. Okay. Let's go a bit more outrageous. Let's go Ménage à Trois and Apothec. Apothic, one vintage, they clocked in at 21. It's sugar water. That's what it is. We all love sugar. We are pre-programmed to love sugar. But it's all it is because it brings the fruit forward. It makes the wine softer and more appealing. But really, it's all sugar.
I would posit too that a lot of the American drinking palate and being like prone to more sugar is not
Sure.
just because of fast food diet, but it's because of the way we drink wine without food. We don't need the elevated levels of acidity to bring out flavors of food. We're drinking the wine by itself, which is inherently backwards from how Europeans drink wine. And so when you drink wine by itself, you want those smoother, softer, fruitier characteristics. You don't want the acid because the acid works with food, but it doesn't work by itself. So I posit that the reason why it's marketed as such, that these wines are so big names, so famous with such elevated sugar content, is because we don't drink wine with food like Europeans do, which is a shame. I'm trying to convince people to do otherwise.
Oh, and again, there is nothing wrong with putting sugar in your wine. Just inform the customer. And just inform the consumer, because the consumer believes that they're buying a healthy product, and they're not. They're buying a very high alcohol, high sugar, packed with calorie wine. Yeah, there is that aspect to it. So anyway, give more information to the consumer.
Excellent. Well, I'd love to pick on some people and ask them their favorite wine of the bunch and how they and why. Tawana, I'm going to pick on you first because Tawana, by the way, Jacques has attended every single virtual class I have ever taught since COVID happened. So I'm going to pick on her because she's my fellow wine nerd over here. What was your favorite wine of the bunch and why?
It was the fourth one,
Les Anciens.
Oh man, it was like silk going down, so smooth. A great balance of all the flavors. The tannins were very like soft, not slapping you in the face. I love the color of it. It's got, a little bit of the brownish tinge to it. So it almost makes it look like a much older wine than it is.
Yeah.
And then, man, I wish I'd opened it instead of Corvined it, so I would have an excuse to drink more of it. But
well, there's still time.
There's still time. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. No, it was fabulous. I really, really enjoyed that one.
Well, it's interesting really to do a back-to-back natural selection, savoir vivre, which is this sort of unruly middle school child, and then Les Anciens, which at this point has a PhD. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very elegant. There's
something to be said for a little bit of aging and for a little bit of time in bottle, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, this is a wine that even surprised us for sure. So
yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Of course.
I love it. Angela, can I ask, do you have anything open that you were tasting?
So I actually have the Vermentino. It's one of my favorite for the warmer weather that we have for today, thankfully. I'd love to say that I was able to taste the Les Anciens with y'all, but Kira took every bottle that we had at the warehouse, so I don't have access to it until potentially the next vintage. So,
girl, let me know. I will give you some wine. We can make this work.
But the natural selection is one of my all-time faves. It's kind of like one of my go-to. Always. I just love the wine. I think it goes with a myriad of different foods. And like Jacques was saying, it is kind of a fall-friendly wine, but to me, it's also kind of a grilling patio, even in the warmer weather. It's a great wine all the way around. When in doubt, natural selection.
No, absolutely. I usually say that if I can't sell natural selection, I might as well close up shop right now, because the amount of work that goes into this wine is depressing in comparison to its price. It's
Yeah,
really, it's always a great value. It's always, you always need a wine like this that grabs people, and then you can introduce them to more, esoteric wines like Savoir Vivre or Ancien.
the first time I tasted not the whole portfolio, because y'all make a lot of wine, but Angela brought out, so that I could select 4 that I wanted to taste, she brought out a bunch of all of the wines, and I tasted them all. I was like, Angela, something's wrong here. I don't understand how they could be certified organic, certified biodynamic through Demeter. They're B Corp certified, like all of this stuff. They're old wines, historic estate. How does the wine not cost twice as much? And it's French, and it's during the time of tariffs. So
I will introduce my new prices next month. And no, but again, it's making wine in the Languedoc. You can find Minervois. It's something that says Minervois on a supermarket shelf for probably $8.99. So that's the difficulty of making wine, but it makes it more interesting. As far as the reason why we make so many different wines, there's a very simple reason for that. The winery, we have space. A lot of wineries make 1 or 2 wines because you have to move it out. You just don't have the space for it. Whereas we have I mean, these eggs, we have 14 of those. We have 18 other fermenters. We have a lot of space to play around and to sort of park a couple barrels somewhere and forget about it for a couple of years and come back to it. And it's more fun, and it makes it more interesting.
I love it. One question that was sent to me direct that I realized you didn't get was a question, especially when it comes to the B Corp certified. So the workers that come in to do your harvest and winemaking, when there's a peak of labor necessary, are you using local workers, or you do have a staff that's employed throughout the entire year?
Everything closes locally. Everything closes. Everybody goes and pick grapes. Retirees are great, plus they're really, really fast. But also picking grapes. In France, there is still this tradition of harvest. It's a freaking party. Big, massive lunches. We roast entire pigs at the winery. It's a big event, and it's a fun event. So there's also some of the usual guys that come up from Portugal and Spain. Same thing. Those people have jobs, but for harvest, they'll take a week, 2 weeks vacation, and they'll just come and pick some grapes. But otherwise, we have 12 employees, and they've been with us for an average of 10 years, and they all have full retirement plan, full medical, and they have 6 weeks vacation. So I will be accepting resumes on my way out.
I was gonna say, don't tell us all that if you don't want to hire some people from Virginia to come work for you. So
yes.
Well, and my dad is now, I see, Sam Pop is my dad. So instead of a
cool.
soccer dad, there's some mom and some pop, and he's now volunteering. So. Oh,
this question: how many do you do les anciens aging? Oh, the wine itself. We have. I cracked open in 2008 the other day, and it was still kicking around. I would say this is a wine that you probably want to drink within the next 5 years at this point. 16 was a very good year in the Languedoc. All in the Rhone Valley, South Rhone. 16 was pretty banging.
I love it. Chris and Heather, can I ask y'all to unmute yourselves and tell us your favorite wines? I know you're huge GSM lovers, huge Southern Rhone red blend lovers. So I feel like this is right up your alley.
So we tried the Vermentino, which I really like. Of course, we're more red wine people than white, but the Vermentino was really good. The red that we did was the Savoir Vivre, and it really is a very, very interesting wine. Personally, I love it. When we opened it up straight out of the bottle, we didn't decant it or anything. Basically popped the bottle and we poured it directly. And when we took our first whiff, we were both like, "Whoa, what is that?"
Yeah.
And then and then that blew off, and then the first sip was had a bite to it. It was almost a bitterness, and then as it opened up, the balance now is just perfect. It's a really interesting wine. We're still trying to figure out all the things that we're getting on the nose here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. At first, those wines can be really shocking. On the first nose, you're like, whoa, what the hell is this animal? And then, like everything else, then you sort of take your time, go back to it a couple times, and go, oh, okay, all right, well, let's go through this exercise. But yeah, and it's a very such an assault on the senses at first.
Mhm.
And that's why we make it. So, and there was the question about natural wine as well. We are considered natural. We are selected every year to be part of the Raw Wine Fair, which is the end all be all of natural wine. But having said that, as far as tasting profile, we love freshness. We love freshness, and we love technically sound wine. There's a lot of natural wines out there that taste like car accidents, and even at Raw Fair, you go through the tables, and sometimes you feel like asking the person across from you, like, how can you show this at a professional event? You know, and again, we go back to what we're talking about at the beginning. The wine has to be good. The wine has to be good. If the wine sucked, again, people will move on. They'll drink something else. Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely, I agree. Every time I tell people, like, when they ask me specifically, what's the deal with biodynamic? Why do you always talk about it? I was like, well, first of all, if someone needs to market their wines as biodynamic, it means it might not be very tasty, or market their wines as natural. It might not be very tasty. But if a wine is tasty and it's also biodynamic, hell yeah. So
Well, but then you look at all the very top estate in the world, you know, Fetzer or Weinbach or Domaine de la Romanée-Conti, Domaine Le Fleuve in Burgundy, and biodynamic, all of them. Why? Because it works. It works. Obviously, these estates have reached a level of notoriety that they don't need to communicate on this anymore. But somebody like the Hermitage from Michel Chapoutier, they're absolutely all biodynamic.
yes, indeed. Can I ask my parents, some mom and some pop, what was their favorite wine? They have also attended plenty of my classes, understandably.
You might want to mute yours.
Yeah, we got you.
I'm muted.
Okay. I hear an echo. You've definitely made me a believer. These were excellent wines. Do you hear an echo?
Hang on just a second.
How about this? Does that work? Can you hear?
All right. Let's go to Angela. You had some other questions, and then we might switch over, and I'll just let my parents take over my laptop to avoid the echo.
So I kind of wanted to turn the tables on the teacher and see if Kira, if you had an opinion on the rosé. So the Château Maris rosé is available. However, we sold out of it almost immediately.
Yeah.
So it wasn't here for this event particularly. However, thankfully, the shipping gods are working in our favor, and hopefully we'll have it restocked by next week. So Kira, what were your impressions on the rosé in case anybody would like that in the future?
and by the way, my ad for the rosé, I will add this note, is that I think we could all agree that 2020 was a challenging year, and a year that no one really cared to remember. So this is the first wine of the vintage that we made, and we were at the printer, and at the last minute we decided to remove the vintage 2020 from the rosé. So it's the rosé from the vintage that will no longer speak its name. But it is delicious. It's almost frisante. It's so full of life.
I love it. Yes, I had the same experience with it, and I tasted, one little bit. And when you do wine tastings and you do multiples in a day, you're pouring this much, and
No. You have to. Yeah.
it's you're spitting out everything and good to go.
Yeah.
But that rosé, I was like, can I try that again?
Yeah. No. You need half a glass at least just to get a proper taste. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, so super delicious, and yes, Angela, let me know when that's back and ready, and that will be certainly available in your curated 6-packs for sure for delivery. So here is Sam Pop.
All right, Sam Pop.
From
Yes.
very far away to talk about the wines that he liked.
Yes, I came a long way. I think I liked the natural selection best, but they were all delicious. You've definitely made me a believer. I'm going to call in some family favors here and tell Kira that whenever she has some of these in stock, then I will let some other people buy some, but I will definitely claim my share of these. These were delicious. I love it.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, that's that. I'm so glad because we can we can have intellectual conversation about the wine, but wine is pleasure. Wine is friends and family and discussions about relationships and politics and life.
Yeah.
Talking of which, usually to conclude a tasting, I especially in the last year as we previously discussed, it's been pretty challenging. So if I can just show you this screen up, let's do that for a second. Because we forget to put things in perspective sometimes. Can anybody see this? It's mostly a black screen. And this we have the United States to thank for that picture. This is probably the most important picture ever taken. It was taken in 1990 by the spaceship Voyager 1, which was sent into space in 1977. And by the 90s, it was running out of batteries, and it had passed Neptune. It was essentially on its way out of the solar system. And as it was running out of batteries, they were going to turn off some elements of the ship, including the camera. And Carl Sagan convinced NASA to turn the ship around and take one last picture of planet Earth. And so that little speck of dust you see there suspended on that ray of light on the right side, that's us. Yeah, every blowhard politician, every supreme leader, every superstar winemaker, that's it. It's on that little planet, and maybe we should take care of it.
I love that sentiment so much. It's such a beautiful picture of why it's so important to take care of the planet we live on. A less religious or philosophical way of looking at it would be the meme that I saw recently was we need to take care of planet Earth. It's the only planet that has wine.
As far as I know.
So both the philosophical and the cosmic and the just ultra practical of we need wine and we can't do that if we
and lots of it. Yes.
So.
Well, Kira, that was a real pleasure. Thank you for having me tonight, and thank you for everybody. We're almost through this. The light is at the end of the tunnel, and let's have a party.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Jacques. Appreciate it.
No,
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll let you go, Jacques. I know, I'm sure you have family events and whatever brought you to Philadelphia.
I got some wine drinking to do.
Okay, sounds good. Well, enjoy the rest of your Saturday night. Thank you. If anyone wants to stay on, I'll be on for a little bit more to chat about the wines. But thank you, Jacques. Appreciate.
Good night, everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you.